What is non-duality? Wow! I am so excited to talk about this topic as I've been extensively researching it for more than 3 years now, and I can finally say that I managed to figure the things out and to share my insights with you. In this video, we're going to be talking about what is non-duality, as well as trying to explain what experiencing it may feel like. But more importantly, at the end of this video, we will dive into its radical implications in our lives and how those can benefit you. So make sure you stick until the end. But before we begin this discussion, give us a like and consider subscribing to this channel if you're interested in these sort of topics. So what is non-duality? Well, I guess the best way to answer that is to begin first by explaining what is a duality. You see, at the current level of consciousness we are now, everything that comes into our awareness appears as a duality. In fact, every concept we have is defined against its opposite. Even this conversation is a duality. So, what is it then? Well, everyone can think of a duality, like up, down, good versus bad, empty, full, progress, regress, man, woman, dead, alive, etc. As a human being, you live from a dualistic orientation. For example, the clothes are either wet or dry, or you might say, I like it or I dislike it. You define the meaning of an action or object against its opposite. Thus, you are creating separate partitions for everything you encounter in your awareness. For example, when you say chair, table, smartphone, or laptop, you create different labels and categories for each of these objects. You might include the chair and the table under the category of furniture, for example, whereas the phone and the computer go under the label of electronics. Pretty straightforward, right? You perceive every object as somehow separate from the rest of its surroundings. You cannot say the smartphone is the same as the table, because first of all, it sits on top of the table, thus it is not the table. And on the other hand, the smartphone is a gadget, and the table is just furniture. They cannot be the same, thus they are different. The conclusion is the smartphone is one thing, and the table is another thing. Now think of a coin for a second. The first tendency is to say that the coin has two sides, heads and tails, right? But my question for you is, what if this is not correct? What if the heads and tails are in fact identical? Couldn't there be something that makes these things exactly the same? This is when non-duality comes in to help. Non-duality simply means not two, and it basically refers to the idea of oneness, completeness, or also called unity. What we're really trying to do here is explain the nature of things before thought, and before the appearance of concepts and labels, as every single human thought is a duality. Non-duality, also known as Advaita, means there is no separation between objects, the duality between things being non-existent. Remember the coin we talked about earlier? Well, non-duality means there isn't such things as two sides of the coin, there is just the coin. The same idea can be applied to everything we talked about. Up becomes down, good becomes bad, ugly becomes beautiful, and woman becomes men, and so on. You get the idea. This concept is a bit tricky to explain because words are just more dualities. Thinking of shapes, colors, smells, or any other human notions isn't going to help us in understanding this. Rationality isn't going to help us very much either, as rationality itself is a duality. So if you're having a hard time understanding this, don't worry, it's completely normal. However, this is the best attempt that I could come up with in explaining the concept of Advaita. If you're a student of non-duality, you've probably heard of consciousness. And for those of you who don't know what this means, think of everything around you being made out of consciousness. There are no atoms, molecules, or any other particles but consciousness. For every thought, smell, sound, color, object, and living being is made out of consciousness. In fact, every atom, molecule, or any other particle you can come up with are also made out of consciousness. This logic is actually very simple. Consciousness is everything, and because everything is made out of one, all dualities become non-existent. You cannot say any longer up or down because up is consciousness and down is also consciousness. Also, a bottle becomes no different than a glass because they're both made out of consciousness. but these are all relatively close examples. Let me ask you something else. Is there any difference between a bottle and the sun, for example? Of course not. They're both consciousness. Consciousness, awareness, nothingness, void, oneness, completeness, unity, God, or however you want to call it, is everything that there is. There cannot be any dualities because there isn't consciousness and something else beyond it. A bottle cannot be any different than the sun because the bottle is made out of consciousness and the sun is made out of something else. Think of reality as you know it as a big circle, and label this circle as consciousness. Now, add into this circle any object you want, a car for example. Now try to place something outside the circle, a mobile phone, or maybe something intangible like radio waves. Now my question for you is, can we label these as consciousness or something else? Of course they are also consciousness, because that is everything that there is. It is infinite. Nothing can exist outside of it, because even the notion of outside is also consciousness. Quite tricky, right? I know. It's a bit hard to understand because again, we're using dualities to explain what non-duality is. But the best way that you can understand this is by actually experiencing it. Imagine for a moment you could become everything around you. Imagine there is no separation between you and the other things. There are no boundaries, words, or any other labels between you and the chirping of a bird, for example. How radical is that? Instead of just witnessing the sound and labeling it as loud, quiet, relaxing, or annoying, instead of all of that, becoming and experiencing it without any judgment. Can you even accept that as a possibility? In the end, your ego is also a duality, and because you see yourself as a separate entity in the universe, you believe you are separate from everything else. What I am suggesting here is the possibility that you are no different than a tree, for example. You don't see the tree, you are it. Can you increase your level of consciousness to that extent? Others have done it, and you can do it too. As human beings, we find ourselves very low on the spectrum of awareness. The higher on the spectrum you find yourself, the better. To experience non-duality, all you have to do is increase your level of consciousness, either by meditating, doing yoga, self-inquiry, as well as by using psychedelics or any other practices from different cultures and traditions. This isn't an easy thing to be done, but with the right knowledge and experience, the rewards for doing so are tremendous. The impact of such realization is so radical that it can even make you immortal, like real immortal. This is arguably one of the greatest benefits that you have by becoming enlightened, eliminating the fear of death. People using this process come to the realization that death is nothing more than an illusion, a duality. You can either be dead or alive. By experiencing non-duality, you become aware of the fact that such dualities don't exist. Thus, being dead is nothing more than being consciousness. Quite astonishing, isn't it? Moreover, the level of compassion, love, and joy that you feel in life is going to skyrocket because realizing that you are one with everything teaches you one of the highest lessons of the universe, self-love. Not in an egoic way, but rather in a universal one. You see, becoming enlightened makes you realize that you're no longer a separate entity in the universe. To a certain extent, enlightenment brings harmony and pace into your life. Seeing yourself as a part of a whole can change your life for the better forever. So, this is my take on non-duality and its astonishing rewards. I hope that you now have a better understanding of what this means and that you're now more motivated in bringing these mystical experiences into your life. Let me know in the comments down below what's your opinion on this. Please click the like button for me if you like this video, and subscribe to this channel for more videos just like this in the future. This channel is a great place where you can continuously expand your consciousness, bringing you closer to the ultimate truth.